here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. We have lots to talk about, but we want to get to the calls right away, so let's do that. We've got some calls coming in. When we get a chance, we'll talk about where we've been and what we've done. But right now...
What?
Are you guys ready?
I wish hear what's
or
going
see
on.
Because
you were talking so that we knew the camera was on you, so we could do whatever shenanigans we want.
Yeah, so you let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
What are you throwing back and forth?
He needed
My
paper and a pen.
I write down these calls so I can transcribe them to the YouTube feed.
A lot of peripherals going on in my vision there.
But we figured you're enough of a professional. You would just roll and not worry about what the kids were doing on the other side of the wall.
I was rolling, but then I had to figure out if I needed to do anything else. Let's go to Boston and talk to Eddie. You're on the Under the Hood show. Eddie, welcome to the zoo.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
All right, my wife's got a 2018 Volvo S60. And the other day, her start-stop system is not available. I checked the little battery underneath the plastic cowl, and I'm getting 12.92 volts with the car off and running. There's no warning lights on the dashboard, but if you go into the computer screen, into all the functions available, and you go into My eDrive, when you shut the start-stop, it shows off. When you turn it on, it shows unavailable. The button light turns green when it's on, nothing when it's off. Any ideas?
Wonder what my great-grandpa would think of this conversation.
He'd say, start, stop,
He'd
turn the key
He'd
off.
say, what's a Volvo?
Yeah, maybe.
That's been around a while.
I did learn something on this show a while ago. The good thing about start-stop technology, when it first came out, I learned it on this show.
Did you say your great-grandpa?
Yeah.
Wasn't your great-grandpa from Germany?
Sweden.
And
Sweden.
Yeah.
Sure, we had that back then.
Yeah, okay. That was to say, you asked if he knew what a Volvo was. I'm like, I bet he did.
Yeah, you got us back there.
Yeah, but when the start-stop, when anything goes wrong with that start-stop technology, it defaults to not stopping.
Not available.
Which is good, because it
just starts.
Right.
And
At
shuts,
first, I remember there was an article about it. The first ones they made stopped.
Well, and it's not just that system. There are other things when it sees in the network of the vehicle. If they're not right, it says, hey, I'm not going to let you remote start this car.
There you go.
I'm not going to do the auto start stop. I'm going to turn that stuff off because we want to keep this thing running in case there's something wrong. But I'm totally just reaching.
You're right on. So the start stop is not broken. Something else is broken. And therefore,
most likely
it's not operating. I have not personally ever seen a start-stop system fail in itself. It's always been external failures. You've got a code somewhere in the car, somewhere in the system. So what we do is we plug in one of our scanners and hit the all code scan button. It's going to read everything: ABS, transmission, the airbags. Everything is going to be read on it. There's going to be a code in there somewhere, is what we're going to find. I'm sure of it. Something.
And the ironic thing is we seldom use it. We always
turn it off. Yeah, you when you start up the car, then you hit the button to turn it off because it's annoying sometimes.
Well, right now it's permanent. Now it's permanently disabled. So maybe you just leave it broke.
Well, except you got the message.
That's what I say.
You could
leave it. No,
there's
no messages.
Oh no. Well, then just leave it. But you will want to know if there's another code. Now, if the code comes up and it's something that has nothing to do with the performance of the engine or anything that's going to hurt anything, I wouldn't fix it. Because there are a lot of codes that can come up. Often we will scan a car that has 0 codes in it. It'll come up with like mirror circuits not correct or HVAC temperature circuit not reading, but it's working just fine. It just comes up with weird things like undervoltage or overvoltage, something weird in that system. So I think I'd probably just leave it too. I don't really want it to work.
But you've definitely got to check it, though, and find out what the other problem is.
I did something along this line.
Right.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to find that. But I did find, so I was driving a rental car, not this last trip, but I don't even know where I was with the time before that. But we were driving this car, and as I was driving,
No GPS in the car, apparently.
well, here's the thing. It had starts. Oh, I know. I was out in Washington with my daughter. So when I'd stopped the car, it started counting, and I think it was a Nissan, but the dash would count seconds the car was off every time I stopped. So in the longest trip we had, it counted the seconds. Well, then after a few more trips, I was like, okay, it's been off, 250 seconds, and then it would count minutes and stuff. But when I was done, it had a summary, and I hit it. That car had stopped and been shut off for 3.2 hours during my entire trip of 10 days. 3.2 hours. How much fuel do you think you save with an engine shut off for 3.2 hours? Or how much fuel do you think that car would use if I just started up and let it idle 3.2? That is significant in 10 days. So that was in stop and go traffic in town. So if I had driven that car for a year and I was in stop and go traffic, I don't know what you get, maybe 10, 15 hours of shutting off. So we all try to shut that system off. We don't like it. But when you have a counter in front of your face, it looks different to you.
Yeah, I know.
Does that help you out there, Eddie?
Still
Get
don't
you
like
going
it.
the right direction?
A little bit. I was thinking of disconnecting the main battery and maybe reset everything. And
You could, but on a Volvo, I wouldn't risk it. You may have some other things to reset. They're getting better about that. First few years they had that, boy, you could lose Volvos, Audis, Volkswagens. You'd have to reprogram stuff if you pulled it. You'd be better off to plug a scanner into it and hit the reset button.
all right.
Keep your backup hooked up.
There you go, Eddie. Thanks very much for the call. Good luck. I have start stop, and you don't
Yeah,
even
you do.
notice it. I don't
Not
even
in your car,
in the Prius.
because you don't have a starter.
No, I have start stop.
But you don't have a starter. Your car
Right.
it's got an
Yeah,
electric motor, so it's a
Right.
whoosh.
I'm just saying in the Prius, it's not noticeable.
No, and it's perfect in a Prius.
Yeah.
I love that. But
It's not noticeable at all. But
you would hear it with that. You've driven a starter
since
car,
we've
right?
been back, I have not. That has start stop.
Oh, yeah. It's like
Well,
every
that was
time.
I was walking across the street and I was in front of a big truck. I think it was
Run. Dive.
I think it was a
Serpentine.
Toyota. I'm not sure because I looked at it.
You saw the grill real close.
I only glanced at because I was right in front of it at the stop sign, and as he was getting ready to go, it started again, and it sounded like somebody starting a big giant pickup truck right next to my face. It was startling, and it wasn't flawless. And then it went. And I
Well,
was like,
people will pull up. What I do is I pull up to the stop sign, the car shuts off, and then if you lightly let off the brake, and just like a quarter inch, so the
Right.
car's not moving, it'll start. So most people, or a lot of people, will have that
Absolutely.
habit. They'll stop and they'll let off. So if you walk out in front of this thing, right as he stopped and it shut off, and then he let off, the car's starting, and you're going to be scared to death.
yeah. I figured out immediately what was happening. But it was a big truck starting, and it was very noticeable. I thought the way it started like a full-size pickup truck right next to my face. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Bill here. Bill, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hi, guys. I love the show. Listened to it for years.
Thank you very much.
You bet. I have a 1976 Ford Highboy. When I bought it used many years ago, it had a 360. I don't remember why I had to replace that motor. We replaced it with a 390. Anyway, we want to resurrect this pickup. It hasn't run for many years, and thought it'd be fun to get it running again.
Bill,
And,
before you go on, Bill, I want to stop you and say, don't mention the color in any of your descriptions yet, because we're going to guess on it, right? We're going to guess on a
We're going to
gonna
guess.
guess.
We're going to
Okay.
guess for a Berkeley 1 Classic.
Yeah.
Guess the color.
All right, now go ahead. Sorry.
So the carburetor is junk. And what do you recommend? Do we put a carburetor back on it, or do
Nope.
we, a fuel injection system on it?
What are you going to do with the truck?
just drive it around, have fun. It's not going to be for work or anything like that. It's just going to be something nostalgic to have running again and drive it once in a
Electrify it.
while.
Are you gonna
Electrify
Are you
that
gonna
baby.
put fancy wheels on it, or are you gonna put hubcaps on it like original?
No, it already has. I think it had white
Okay.
steels, both
Okay.
rim,
Wagon wheels.
oversized.
That's what I think
Yeah,
of when
there
I
you
think of. I picture an old blue and white Highboy with white wagon wheels.
Well,
That's in my head. Oh, I
we
guess
s-
that's my guess.
we
But later,
saw-
later.
We just got back doing our show live at Barrett Jackson. We saw some
Bragger.
really neat stuff.
As
We
we
didn't
say,
see one of those. Did we see
We
any
did.
Ford Highboys?
There was a Highboy on
as
there.
we say,
yes.
for the first time of a million.
He
in the
doesn't
next
point it
month.
out. I was too busy focusing.
Yeah. But now that we got that out of the way, because he was. But
I
we-
was. I
but
totally
we-
got lost.
We
There's only one car I focused on.
there was a Highboy, but
Wasn't that?
we also saw a '77 International Scout, and it had fuel injection in it.
Oh, I did
Somebody
see
had put on. That was the first time I had seen a 345 International. Somebody had put fuel injection on with the Holly system.
Those are great. You can put them on anything.
And so, based on how you say you're going to use it, and I'm guessing you're not the one that wants to wonder every year when you take it out of storage if that's the year the accelerator pump's going to go out of the carburetor,
And pour gas all over everything.
or if that's the year that the float bowl is going to be stuck because of stuff inside of it. I think at that point, I'd like to be the year every year that I get it out that I only have to worry about the fuel in the tank, which is not going to be a big deal if you're using it every year. And you just start the thing up and let it do its thing. I would convert it to a throttle body fuel injection system, such as the Holly Projection or one of those.
Holly, MSD.
makes a good one.
Holly's probably going to be a little more affordable. That MSD is, well, I don't know. Maybe they've
Yeah,
come out with some
I think
more.
that market has changed a lot. I think it's gotten more affordable for them to build the items, and I think that the technologies have made it simpler for them to
Yeah.
do this.
Oh, they're so simple. Most of them are just like self-contained in the distributor. You drop the distributor in, that's where you're getting all your sensors from, and then.
But if you do a throttle body system like that, you can still maintain the look under the hood with a slight modification to your air cleaner system, and probably keep the original looking big blue Ford air cleaner underneath the hood if that matters to you.
Oh, no, sounds great. I like the idea.
Yeah, and you can jump on to, if you're a web guy, I was just crawling around. Holly's got great resources on their website. You can go to JEGS or Summit, and all of those companies have really, really embraced having huge sections on their websites for that kind of stuff, for the conversions, and because it's a big, big deal. And you have got a truck there that is very valuable, and you know that, I'm guessing.
Do you know that truck could be very valuable?
Well, I've had a lot of offers on it, and some of them offers have been pretty impressive.
Yeah, we were, like I said, just getting back from the first Electric Car show that we've been to live as a radio show. I'd have to go back and look at the docket, but they sold a Highboy, and while the overall sales were probably down on a lot of cars, there were certain things that were unique that still pushed the price to the limits. Such as, like I mentioned, that one Scout. There was two Scouts we were paying attention to because we got one of our managers here that just loves Scouts.
Or an old BMW.
Yeah, old BMW was another one that I was paying attention to. But those vehicles, I've seen them selling for $30,000 to $50,000. The one Scout brought $77,000. The other Scout brought $100,000. They were both very nice restored Scouts, but you're just seeing the market, and those Highboy trucks. You're starting to see them bring $20,000, $30,000, $45,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 restored, depending on the level of restoration. So people need the good, solid donors if they want to take it to that level, or some people just want them, just like you're doing. Let's get this thing out and let's drive it and let people say, wow, what is that? Big 3/4 ton, lift it up a little bit. It's just a good looking truck.
All right, hold on. I'm going to bring him down.
Sure.
You're going two-tone, blue and white?
It's blue and white. It's blue with the white stripe down the side and white wagon wheels.
I'm going blue solid. Is that, that's two separate guesses.
It's a 76.
Probably got white letter BFG.
I'm going to say this thing is all white.
Okay. That's a sleeper color there. Bill, what?
Nailed it.
Shannon
it's
nailed
all
it.
white.
It's
All
all
white.
white. Okay. There we go. Thanks, Bill. Good luck, all right?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. His phone is cracking up a little bit. What percentage of original? I mean, if the truck is 100% original, totally stock, you would keep the carburetor in there. Yes, or not even then? What percentage of
No, you could always put it back on.
right? So
Just
even
change it. You're not butchering anything, and you could put it back on. But
so almost any level of
Short
restoring.
of a concourse restoration where you're trying to make that thing nut and bolt just like
Right.
it rolled off the assembly line.
You want to do
If there's
that.
a degree of driving, taking this to car shows, it sits around every once in a while, or you're going to use it just as a fun farm truck or whatever it might have to
If
be.
you're putting it on a turntable and it's got lights on it, maybe.
Then you probably put the carburetor back on it. But otherwise, I'm probably putting.
But it's going to stink too. If that is in your house, if you said, hey, I had one of those in high school, that was my first high school truck, and you want to drive it now and then, but you want to store it inside of your garage, which is climate controlled with your other, maybe you got a Ferrari in there or whatever, those don't smell like gas. Those old cars with a carburetor that are vented to the air, they're always going to have a smell. So you got fuel
Never thought about
injection on
that.
it. Yeah, fuel injection, you're not going to
You can
have
seal
that.
that system off.
Yep. And
Doesn't
you
sound
could
bad.
put one on put a carburetor on it later if you want, but really nobody's going to care. If they see that thing like at the auction block going across, they're going, oh, it's got fuel injection. Oh, that means I can actually drive it.
Right.
You know, if it's got a carburetor,
I accidentally left my vent open on the gas can once and came back a day later and it smelled like gas and I felt good. I liked it.
I'm going to just make sure I finish with this thought though. There are plenty of folks that are they just want things the way they were.
Mhm.
They know how to manage a carburetor. They know how to maintain the fuel system.
yeah.
They will keep that carburetor and they're going to say, you don't need to do that because carburetors work for years. They did. And they do. But there's fewer and fewer people that work on carburetors, that want to work on carburetors. You got to hunt for them in your town to find them usually if there's something wrong with them. Or you're going out and you're spending $200, $300, $400, $500 to buy an aftermarket carburetor that has modern choke technology, has serviceability, a Carter AFB or a Holly carburetor.
Edelbrock or Holly.
Yeah.
I think it's around $1,000 for
yeah.
the fuel injection.
So you're splitting costs on what you'd want to do there.
Right.
So it almost just makes more sense. But there are people out there that say, I don't need to do that. And no, maybe you don't if you know how to manage it.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
It might be a difficult question. Did you have a hint on the white truck?
No.
Okay.
No.
You made a face when he said it was white.
But my only hint was most of the Highboys were more base model trucks.
Okay.
And it was, if you saw, unless I'm wrong here, we paid a lot of attention to Ford trucks growing up because
Yeah.
my dad cut his teeth on Ford pickups as a big mainstay of building our business here, which started as Nordstrom's used and rebuilt trucks. It was Ford pickups, Chevy grain trucks, and some Chevy trucks. And it was a lot of them. But the Ford trucks we paid a lot of attention to. And most of the Highboys were more basic trucks. Now, if you had one that was an an XL or XLT or whatever, they were few and far between, but they were premium. And so
Okay.
that's why I went down that
So
road.
you have experience with that.
Yep, I could be totally off base, but that was what my indoctrination into Ford pickups
White Highboys.
led me to that guess.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you didn't know, you can watch the show on our YouTube channel. And if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Jeff Carmichael, congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute. Find them at uti.edu. And Berkeley One Classic celebrating 50 years of collector car insurance coverage.
We should thank Berkeley One. We should
Thank
talk
you,
about
Berkeley
that.
One.
Yeah.
In a little bit here. So Universal Technical Institute. Training, learning about cars. There's a big opening right out there now for mechanics. Oh, there always has been, but you can learn a lot about cars there. There's things that are applicable to the jobs that are out there available right now. There's a lot of electronic stuff.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Are there jobs new in the industry, like UTI jobs that a person would take coming out of school, where they don't wrench anything really?
Oh yeah, there's
Okay.
electronic, but I mean you're working your butt off, but it's more electronic and diagnosis, and you better be right, because if you're a diagnostician at a shop, and your job is to diagnose the car, and then there's a tech whose job is to replace those parts that you just diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think you're going to be there if 9 out of 10 you're wrong and they have to figure it out themselves,
Right.
or go a little further or bring it back to you? You got to be right. So that's where that training comes in, and they'll get you a good head start. UTI.edu.
866-594-4150. It's our first show back in the studio after we went to
it is.
Arizona with Berkeley One.
Yeah, thank you, Berkeley One Classics. They brought us out there to the Barrett Jackson auction, and we got to meet a lot of new people, a lot of people in our business realm that helped us with things. Also, got to meet a lot of their people that we had not met before. We got to meet Jim Schwarzkopf, which is he is a insurance rep, one of the reps that he sells and works with Berkeley. Doesn't work. He's not a Berkeley agent, but he does work, and he works with the auction. If you buy a car out of Barrett Jackson, you need to get it insured before you leave, or make sure you have coverage, and he works with doing that. We've got some interviews that are posted right now to our YouTube channel. One is with the entire show that has everything in it, and then there's a breakout interview of Craig Jackson. He sat on with us for 30 minutes. We got to thank Craig for that, because he's usually a 5-minute guy, but he was excited to talk about a couple of his cars and his mom's car, and that's what we wanted to hear. We were excited to learn about
Yeah,
it.
he referenced some things on his own YouTube channel that I want to go watch.
Right.
That I didn't even, it wasn't on my radar, but I'm going to make an appointment for that.
And Jim had some great stories about cars and things and people insured. And, I just thought of the family that gets involved when you have a real insurance company instead of just the big one that does your house or whatever like
Right.
that. He says, you want to see a grown man cry. He says, you got a billionaire that loses at something that he loves. He says, we have to deal with those situations, and we're there because we're their friends. We want to work with them. So check those things out. It's not, some people are like, oh, what do I want to hear an insurance interview for? There's more to it than that. It's more like a car guy story interview that happens to talk about insurance a bit too.
I was going to tell you we should edit that. I don't know if you guys caught it, but Craig Jackson said Le Mans wrong. He called it Le Mans, France. And I was like, I guess I'm not going to correct him. But
I just kind of went with it.
I think he was right.
That would be correct.
Yeah.
Chris.
It was super. It was really fun. And the things, first of all, as the quasi car guy I have become from this show, it's so cool to see that. And everything is always new. But the learning, I do love the things I learn, like talking to Jim or talking to Tim from Berkeley One, and learning the way that the insurance, way their business works, and the way it works at an event like that, and the whole thing with the shipping. And if you bought something you could ship it there. I enjoy learning all that logistical stuff and all that behind the scenes stuff, just to know, like, oh, hey, there's a guy over there. I went and talked to one of the auctioneers. They had, if you've seen it on TV, all those guys that are in the crowd yelling and the ladies that are out there, they're all auctioneers. And I went and talked to one of them about what was going on. It was just fun. It was
the funniest thing that my wife was watching. The lady, can't remember her name. I've met her before, but she's one of the callers out in front. You saw her out there, the tall girl.
Yeah.
She was calling, and she was screaming out on one of the bigger cars, and she's always chewing gum. You see her up there, and just, hey. She yelled out, and her gum came flying out.
I didn't
and she
see
was
that.
like, hey, and her hand was up when she did it, and as she screamed out, the gum came flying out.
Did she
caught
catch
it
it
in her hand, stuck it right back in her mouth, and
Oh,
kept
wow.
going, and just had this look on her
That's
face
pretty
like,
good.
you saw that, didn't you? And she was still going out, and then she was like, hey.
She caught it.
She
That's
caught
pretty
it just
good.
right
That's
out.
next level.
Yeah, my wife was that.
My luck, it would have ended up in the lady's hair next to the high premium bidder right next to me.
Well, you always got that. That's too.
And the whistles. That was something I'd never seen on TV. the people in the back, like there's people up on raised bars,
The
and
muscle
stuff.
lounge.
Yeah, up in the back, and the auctioneers back there have whistles because they're far out and you can't. So if someone back there bids, they blow like a yeoman's whistle, like a boat whistle. It was pretty neat.
Very, very much. Learning was fun.
And the other thing I was shocked by was the size of the crowd anytime I turned around and looked. Because we tended to sit up closer just so we could see what was going on. And sometimes I would turn around and that place was packed to the gills. And then I would turn around and it wasn't. And then it was again. And I was just, I would think, I haven't noticed in a while.
The ebbs and flows of the auction.
Depends on what's coming through.
Yeah, I suppose.
And this was their first fall auction. So they were
second, but first, basically.
Yeah, that's right. Craig Jackson did say that the opening night that they had done it during COVID in the fall. And so this was
much different.
So this was their first on purpose fall auction to make it a scheduled event. So there was some learning I think they were doing too. The weather surprised them that it was 106.
Right.
Usually they're in the shoulder season or getting close enough to it where you're getting down into a beautiful 80s, 90s during the day, and the nights were wonderful.
Yeah.
But the days were hot, and it's a lot of asphalt, so they had probably not the participation outside that they're used to. But those are all things that they're looking at, and I'm sure they'll figure out and work with and try to keep the consigners on board that were probably not as happy on some cars, but there's other cars, the consigners were just all smiles. And, you know, the buyers and consigners, and I know my sister being an auctioneer, there's always this balance between the seller. You want, you know, she always says you want to do as good as you can for the seller. She does her stuff. She always says with the seller in mind. But at the same token, buyers are looking for value. And so there's some sales where the buyers are happier than the sellers, and there's other sales where the sellers are happier than the buyers. And that balance is always an interesting piece for an auction to figure out.
For sure.
Especially when it's a no reserve auction.
Right.
And you're signing your name to, well, like you said, Russ, the baby. There she goes. I got kind of intimate with a guy that had a little BMW that we spotted walking through the crowd. But I tell this story because it was firsthand, but also the seller perspective.
Right.
As we went through the storage area, he was sitting in a lawn chair like a car show next to his car. And both my wife and I noticed this little green car. We're like, what is that? We did not know what it was for sure at first. We saw the BMW badge on it. And so we went over, and then he was right away, big smile, talking to us about his car. Just, you know, very excited guy. And we started engaging with him. It was a 74 BMW 2002 Tii, which is a small driver's car, little BMW that has a bigger M10 fuel-injected engine in it. So it's one of the early mechanical fuel-injected engines in it.
The birth of the sports sedan.
Yeah, so it was kind of a neat little car. And so there were times at the sale where things were going at a value enough, I thought, you know what, this car might not bring very much. And it's kind of fun. And so we paid attention to it, and we made an appointment to be there on stage. It ended up selling late Saturday night, which I learned from other sellers. If you're a seller, that's not your perfect spot to be.
Right.
Because the hype is kind of drawn down after they sold Sammy Hagar's $4.65 million LaFerrari. And it kind of, that's the crescendo. And then the hype kind of slowly dwindles off as they're filling the TV time that they've got to fill with cars.
I was nervous because I said if you bought something, I'd drive it home, and this didn't have air.
Yeah. So Friday when we talked to this gentleman, he was excited that he had a Saturday time slot, period.
Right.
For his car, because the docket master kind of decides when they're going to sell that car. You don't get to choose when your car goes across. And so as we talked with him, I asked him, I said, what do you think that car is going to bring? I said, what would you like to see? He goes, you know what? It's going to be between $20,000 and $50,000, I think. And I'm thinking in my head, yeah, if it's closer to that lower number, it's going back to South Dakota. This is a fun little car. And so we paid attention to it, and it went up on stage, and I got in one bid, which was way higher than I planned on going because, like, you know, it was moving so fast. But I thought, boy, this thing's going to just stop. In my head, I thought this is just going to stop all of a sudden. And so I got a bid in, and ended up I was trying to get a bid in at 33 or 34, and the auctioneer said, yeah, I was trying to put a bid in at 33, and the auctioneer said, I got you in at 34. You're going to like it. I'm like, no, that wasn't what I was bidding. But then you got right at that point, right. I was on stage, and there's people looking at you, and then all of a sudden you got two tag team auctioneers on you, and you're like, no, that's that's further than I was going to go. I'm done. By then, as they were trying to convince me, I could hear the call, and I was looking at the screen. It was already up to 37.
Yeah.
And it climbed up to 50. He ended up getting 50,000 for it. So I went and found him on stage because he was a recognizable fella. And I said, I gave you a couple bids. I was going to give it a shot. And he goes, yeah, I saw you bidding. And he goes, but I go, I bet you're happy. And he was like, all smiles. He's like, oh yeah. He goes, that was great. That was great.
Yeah.
And his car had brought the top end of what he thought it was going to bring.
Right.
And so it was a car him and his wife had owned for 7 years. He had bought it on eBay. He had restored it. But there was a happy seller.
Yeah.
After that, I walked off stage to go see what was still coming yet for the night. And there was an 87 Trans Am GTA convertible, which was a unique car that had been custom made into a convertible at American Sunroof Corporation, which was legit because they're the company that ended up doing it for the factory eventually. But talking to that guy that happened to be by his car, he was a very sour seller.
He had several
he had brought
cars.
19 cars in, and they just weren't performing the way he wanted. But he's won a lot there before, and he had other businesses, so he wasn't going to go bankrupt or anything, but he was not a happy seller.
Sure.
So, I mean, you saw both sides of that spectrum, that's for sure.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Tennessee and talk to James. You're on the End of the Hood Show. James, what can we do for you?
Yes, I have a 2000 Chevy S10, and I got a really reasonable price, and it's in pretty good shape. But the gauges didn't work, and so I took it apart and put it back together. And but the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge don't work. The oil gauge works, and the voltmeter works, but the other two gauges don't work. And I took it down to have them look at it, and they said, "Well, we can fix it, but it's probably going to cost you about $200." And my goodness, the truck's not, it's not a new truck. It's 2000. I don't got it to mess around with, and I hate to pay that kind of money for gauges.
It's crazy.
So I just thought you might have some ideas on that.
I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. I still got people putting engines in those things and spending several $1,000s to do that, because if you go to try to find a rust-free S10, even a two-wheel drive with no air, you're still going to spend probably $4,000 or $5,000 to get it if it's a really nice truck. So, but I can understand you don't want to spend too much. But here's the first thing to do: if that thing's bolted in and the gauges aren't bad.
One thing we do that I think is we think this way because we're here together. But I think sometimes we think that, well, it's worth $20,000. You can put $4,000 into it. Maybe not. We don't. When we're talking about it in a general sense, it seems like that's a good. But for some, that can be a make or break thing. So that's
sure.
Yeah.
You're not going to junk it for that. That's for sure. But I would say, if the gauges are connected and you're 100% sure there's no wiring loose at that cluster, you need to go under the hood and unplug that green wire that the temperature sensor is plugged into on the side of the block and ground that thing and see if that gauge goes up. If it does, you got a bad sending unit. If it doesn't, and
a green wire.
There's a green wire for that temperature sending unit for that gauge.
Okay.
But you need to make sure that gauge moves when you do that. If it doesn't, and all the connections are good, then your gauges are bad. So that leads your next option to finding a complete cluster from a place like our partner at Car Dash Part. You get the whole thing, you put it in, it's got a warranty on it, so you could put it in and see if it works and go from there. Now, if you put it in and for some reason now your temp gauge works, but your fuel gauge doesn't, then you know that you didn't have a wiring problem and the gauges you just purchased probably have a problem. So, but they didn't have a lot of problems with the 2000 gauges. So I would say you might be buying an instrument cluster. You can put it in yourself. It's pretty easy. You just pop that cover right off.
Okay.
One thing that I'll caution you, when you go on to Car Dash Part, I believe on that vehicle, and you search for the interchange you look up speedometer cluster or cluster, it'll lead you to that part type.
257?
I think it is. Well, it doesn't tell you the numbers on Car Part. We know that behind the scenes because we're so indoctrinated with it. But you'll see the wording, and because that interchange system is owned by a company that will not allow them to put the numbers out there for a search.
Interesting. Okay.
So if you have that speedometer, the interchange on that is only for, in that vehicle, I think, the speedometer that's in the cluster. So
because it will come out.
Yeah, and so they only looked up and made interchange for that one part within the cluster.
Okay.
So when you ask about it, make sure it has the same option set
Yeah.
They're going to send you the whole cluster because nobody takes them apart. But make sure it has the same option set because some of those trucks maybe had full gauges and some might have had just warning lights in a base model truck. But if you go to car-part.com, you will find one of those for a low price. And I think both Russ and I are leaning towards you might have a cluster problem.
Yep.
James, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. I have a question.
Yeah.
I want to say, going back to the Ford Highboy that he had kind of sitting out in the field. This is what I learned at the Barrett Jackson auction. If you have a K5 or a Scout sitting out in the field
with no rust,
don't just look into it.
Call me.
Don't take that guy going, I'll pull that out of there. And a matter of fact,
for free,
yeah.
It's not going to go for a ton of money if it's rust free and you're down in Tennessee or something and you've got one and it's rust free out there, basically, like no holes in it, just surface rust, but it's not running and it's complete.
But just in general, watching the cars go across, of all the cars that went for more than we thought they would, it seemed like the Scouts and the K5s were just
you have to realize
out of control.
If you walk in with that person's basically rust hole free Scout or Blazer, you take it into a shop, it's going to cost you 80 to 90 grand to restore that thing to the condition of the ones we saw. So these people were losing money when they were selling them for 80,000. So that doesn't make yours worth 80.
Right.
It might make it worth 7,500 to 10,000 if it's in pretty good shape. You know, even not running, where it was a $200 car 20 years ago. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, there was a 76 K5 on Marketplace that popped up, and everything we talked about at Barrett Jackson's been popping up on my Marketplace.
Absolutely.
And it was out in a field, weeds around it. And then I think the comment said, I have another one with no title for parts that's stripped out. And the pair was $5,000 is what they wanted for them. Now, literally not more than 10 years ago, that would have been $700.
Right.
You know, scrap price, $1,000. So, I mean, it definitely has changed because people want the trim. They want the seat frames. They want the correct air cleaner setup. You know, that's the kind of stuff that's getting hard to find.
Or scrap it up, do a resto mod, and just come up with your own stuff, put it on there, have it look like a Blazer, and still come up with some big bucks.
Is there, if I have a garage, a barn, it doesn't matter. I have come into a vehicle that was maybe a relative's that I ended up with, and it doesn't run, but it's in nice shape. It's been under a cover. Is there anyone I can call? Who do I call? Can someone help me walk through that and find the best choice for that? Do I have to do it all myself?
Your choice is do it yourself 100% or pay somebody to do it 100%. You can't just like call us and have us give you suggestions on what to do because that costs money. Giving you suggestions costs as much money as actually working on the car and touching it, depending on your time spent.
And that's my question. Say I've got a car that
YouTube
could
is
be
your
worth $10 or $100,000.
Yep.
Is there anyone I can call and pay them $500 or whatever it is to come over and kind of research it and say, this is what I think
they're
going
going
to get for this?
More than likely want you to bring the car to them, but then they can go through it and tell you.
And what do I look for in the yellow pages to find that person?
You don't.
There are a few appraisers out there that will go out and look at things for a fee. And I know people that have done it, but I don't know if they do it as a business, so I'm not going to say it.
And they can't tell you mechanical stuff either. They can't say, well, it looks like you're going to need a new fuel system. You're going to need this and that and to get it going. And some of that stuff you just don't know until you try to get it going. But
I think the best advice I would have is if you've got internet savvy, take a big sampling of what's out there. Just take a big sampling of what's out there. So
see if it's even worth starting.
Yeah. So if you've got a 74 Dart slant 6, it's probably not worth a ton, but all of a sudden you might find out, oh my gosh, look at this. Oh, in California, all of a sudden these things are bringing $10,000. You know, this one's in Connecticut and it's rusted out and it's $300. You start getting a sampling of what's out there, and that can guide you to know there's some signs of life here. I should probably pay a little more attention to this. That's kind of the best method. But like Russ said, don't look at just because a K5 sold for there was one Jimmy that we watched sell for $160,000, or was it 200 and something? Like what I told you guys, we all went,
Yeah.
It was
160, I think it was. 166.
But it was a late model 6.2 liter conversion. It was full, every nut and bolt restoration. It was customized on the interior. I mean, it was top shelf. That's not your comparison if it's sitting out in the shed.
Right.
That Grandpa had it sitting out there for 5, 10, 12, 14 years in a dirt
What did
shed.
it cost to get to
and the
that
bottom
point?
is rusted out from the moisture coming underneath it. That's not the same. But there are certain vehicles that you'll see. I know I watch my sister's sales sometimes, and she gets into a lot of distressed merchandise, and I know she's helped people value vehicles, but I don't think she does it as a business. But there is a time that we've seen her have like a certain Corvette or a certain Mopar or a certain whatever that is the one. It's got the right numbers. It's got the right block. It's got the right axle assembly. It has the pieces that somebody needs to make that
$160,000.
That high dollar vehicle. And so they're going to pay top shelf for that thing no matter what condition it's in, because they have all these things assembled in one place. And that's a different category probably.
Right.
Now, she just sold a 65 Corvette that was burned. I mean, it was French fried across like the whole 3/4 of the car up into the engine. I think one front corner is, and it brought $6,000 to $10,000 because it was a very unique set of what it was. The title and the underpinnings were something desired by somebody, apparently 2 people.
Right. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Got just a minute left. Was there anything you saw that made you notice that car and start to think, oh, I think I like those too? For me, it was the Ferrari. I mean, obviously, but that Ferrari when we walked in, that old 72, what was it? It looked...
I'm trying to remember what it was.
Was it a...
I don't remember. It was a neat car.
It was just it was great. And I've never had a lot of those cars, when you see them in person, it's a different type of noticing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look a lot different in person than they did when I was a kid on the wall. There was some crazy stuff there. And we've talked about it before we went, but there was so much normal stuff there that went for an affordable price that kind of surprised me and shocked me. I was very happy to
how
be
about
there.
that Ferrari? They said that it sold for 120 something at the last auction, and it went for 52 or 53. It was like, boy, that would have been the time to get into a Ferrari.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Hey, thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you. Tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What has caught your attention in the automotive world?
So I've got a lot of calls just this week. Now, I get this call a lot, but this week I've got more than normal. Plus, I've had people coming in with stuff. So I got the calls first couple of them on this last Monday. They said, hey, my car is broken. I think I got a head gasket out. I've been putting in a half gallon of coolant, every week, and it's not running right. And it's a late model car. This is like a 2019, so it's not that old, less than 100,000 miles. And I thought,
I was always confused by that. Late model means newer.
well, a late model in 20 years is not going to be a 2024.
Right.
It's going to be, 2040 or whatever. So
What do you go, 10
later,
years?
we
What do
should
you
just
go?
call it later models, like recent.
Newer model.
Newer model.
So
I use late model all the time too, and it does confuse people. But
they said, what can I do with it, to fix it? And I said, well, it's still worth good money, probably $28,000 to $35,000. I said, you should get it fixed, whether it's a head gasket or an engine, whatever you need. And then, it's well, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I'm just going to go trade it in. I said, well, okay. They said, yeah, I'll just go trade it into the dealer and I'll get another one, something else. Okay. So got that same call again on Tuesday. Same kind of thing. Broken car, transmission acts up, but only after you drive it. You got to drive it at least an hour. And once it gets hot, then it starts chattering. That was a 2021 Suburban or Yukon, XL Yukon. Chattering. What is that? Trans, right, Shannon? Going to need a trans. Probably going to be $5,000-$6,000. Put a trans in it. Oh, I'm just going to go trade it in. Then I got the other calls. 3 after that, between then and now. Yeah, I just bought a car a week ago, and I'm so pissed at the dealer. They screwed me. I bought this vehicle, and the trans was out. Yeah, I'm so pissed at the dealer. What happened? Oh, yeah, I bought it, and it's got a head gasket or something out. They're telling me I'm going to need an engine. Oh, hey, I just bought a car at a dealer. It needs this. Well, was it acting up when you bought it? Well, no, I drove it a few days, and then it happened. Or I got on the highway, and I drove it, and this happened. So who's at fault here? They hate the dealer because they just bought a car that was as is, no warranty. So the dealer's at fault, right? Now, these other people, traded a car in knowing what was wrong with it. And when I've asked people directly before, they said, well, they got lots of money. It's okay. That'll be fine. What's a car? It's like, but what about you buying it? And then I had the one guy that'll never come back again because I laughed in his face when he came to me with a Cadillac 10 years ago and said, what should I do with this? You need an engine. Your head gasket's out. He goes, I'm just going to go take it down to the big dealer here and trade it in. Well, guess what? He traded it in. 3 days later, he came to me with a car he had bought from him, as is, no warranty, and it had an engine problem, and it was going to need to be replaced. And I laughed and I said, didn't you tell me you were going to trade that car in? Well, what about it? And I said, did you trade it in? Well, yeah. I said, and I told him, I said, so you screwed the dealer and you traded in, knowing it was bad. You didn't tell him, did you? And he got so mad at me. I'm like, dude, I'm just stating a fact. Karma's a problem. And he just walked out, and I was like, that's good. And I don't want that kind of customer, because what's he going to do to me and everybody else down the road? So when you think about that, is the dealer at fault on that? Now, if you buy a brand new car, they're typically, every dealer wants to take care of you, and they don't want the reputation of being a horrible place for selling used cars, or they'd never sell a used car or truck. So these things happen. So used car inspections are super important.
And most of the dealers are going to catch that stuff in their process.
They try.
But there are some that they won't show up until you've driven that vehicle 20 miles.
And that's why I tell people, when we do a used car inspection, we include a little more than maybe some of the ones do. We'll drive it, make sure it's good and hot. You get it to our place so we can drive it after you've driven it.
If I call you on the phone, give me an estimate on what a used car inspection is going to cost.
Probably $130.
Okay.
So, and here's what we're going to do. You bring me your Prius,
mm-hmm.
and it's a 2023, but it's got 80,000 miles on it. You bring it in. You've driven it out, so it's hot. So I've got it while it's hot. I'm going to go test drive it, see if I notice anything. Then I'm going to scan all codes, see if I notice anything. Then I'm going to pull out the spark plugs, because they're not horrible on that car, and I'm going to check the compression of it. Just to be sure, because I've had some issues. Yeah, I'm going to look at the condition to see what's burning on there, because I know, now not all cars may be that way, but I know this one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it could have a coolant issue. It could have a head gasket issue. And then I'm going to use my tester and test the coolant, see if there's any exhaust gases in there. If that fails, I know you need to be taking this car back.
Right.
But some cars, we just hardly ever see this kind of problem, so we won't test that. Other cars where we know there's a known issue, every single one's going to get tested for that. And then we're going to look at the brakes, inspect them, see if any of them are dragging or hot because you just got there, and try to catch those things that maybe don't get caught. Or if it's a private buy and we're looking at it, did they just clear the code? So now you've got to drive it 2 or 3 times to get it to reset again.
Right.
And we look and say, the codes were all cleared in this car, less than 50 miles ago. That's a red flag. When did you get it? Oh, I've driven it for 10 miles to get out here. Yeah, well, somebody just cleared the codes. And I don't know what's in there, but I can guarantee if they cleared the codes, they were clearing something. So you can tell that. And then when they do the emissions tests, Colorado and some of the states where they do the testing, they look to see if all the monitors have run and that those codes were not just cleared, just so you could come in and get
without a check engine
pass.
light. Yeah.
So things to check. So, one, maybe you do need to give the dealer some slack when those things happen and find out the truth, kind of backtrack and do a little paper trail looking. Or 2, use car inspection. That's the bottom line. You got to find it yourself because you want to make sure that when you're buying any car, new, used, whatever, or used or from a dealership or used from an individual,
right?
Check it out. Maybe the individual doesn't know. I know for a fact you, Chris, sold your Cutlass knowing that it was fine, and I could have inspected it that morning and it was fine, and the camshaft broke in half, 2-3 hours after you sold it.
Yeah, next day.
So you gave them the money back and said, sorry, that was a weird deal. But most people would just say, it's your problem.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Louisiana and talk to Kelly. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Kelly, what can we do for you?
Well, good morning, and thank you for taking the call. Really enjoyed the show last week with the Barrett Jackson piece. It was really impressive.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a 20, yeah, it was really sweet. The 2018 Honda Pilot, 75,000 miles. Nothing's wrong with it, but I hear you guys talk about fuel additives, and I've never used fuel additives before. If that is something that you recommend on a regular basis, yes or no? And secondly, what type of product should I be looking for?
Well, we always start off with, for people on the fuel quality issue, look for a top tier fuel. If there's in your cycle, if you look on the websites, I think top tier fuel, you can find out where it's available near you. And it is yes, it's a marketing tool, but it also is a requirement of what needs to be in that fuel for certain detergents and certain additives for the quality of the fuel compared to other fuels.
And there are some other gas station or fuel companies, big name brand gas stations that have their own system of that.
Right. There like I said, it seems to be a little bit of competition from the marketing side of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say that a high quality fuel is important to start with. And I know lots of people that have always been very cautious to make sure they're using a top tier fuel or a name brand fuel that works for them. And they have not been a normal fuel additive person. Now, when it gets into the diesel fuel, we feel the additives are imperative. If it was a diesel, this is not, I understand that. But on the diesel fuels, that it is imperative with that.
For sure. I mean, there's certain vehicles like the Fords, they have a problem with stiction. And you're like, what the heck is stiction? And well, there's a problem where the injectors stick and it's all oil driven. And to get rid of that, there's a product by Hot Shot Secret that is used. We use it. Tons of people use it. You're like, that sounds kind of funny. Well, yeah, because it's kind of a secret. But it's Hot Shot Secret. You put it in the oil, and it's made to clean it out. With your vehicle, you have the fuel systems are pretty good, but what we'll notice is not like horrible running, but over time, a slight mileage decrease. And the mileage will decrease and decrease and decrease enough that if you were running a fuel system additive in there to clean it, like a Justice Brothers product, fuel system cleaner, it would clean out those injectors as you drive and keep it clean. But like Shannon said, the best way to do it is a little bit of preventive maintenance, which is the best fuel you can run in there to start with, but then run that fuel system cleaner in there. You usually, it's about a once, if you want to really keep it clean, once a month. That wouldn't be over excessive, depending, and it doesn't matter how many miles you drive, unless you're a really few. If you say, "Oh, I only drive a couple hundred miles a month," well, then you can go a lot longer than that.
Sure.
But if you're going a very long time, like in my car, I'll put it in once a month, and it's seeing a few thousand miles on it. So it's that's a good time to do it.
In LA, do you see a lot of ethanol blended fuels?
Yes, there's usually like 10%, 10% mixture.
How much is your cheapest gasoline product right now? If I were to go and choose the cheapest, which is probably like an E88 or a 10 or 15% ethanol, that's the cheapest one. What does it cost per gallon right now there?
Oh, I usually don't pay attention to that because it's something I can't control.
It makes you want to cry. It's depressing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it over $4?
No. Like $3 and maybe $3 a gallon, and maybe even a little less.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Well, I was just going to say the ethanol blended fuels, as a rule, will burn cleaner over time in your engine than the non-ethanol blended fuels. The alcohol does a great job of a lot of things.
No soot coming off of
one of them
ethanol.
is a lot cleaner of a burn.
Kelly, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Massachusetts and talk to John. John, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hi, guys.
Hey, go ahead.
I have a 67 Mustang with the 289, and I believe it has the original Autolite 2100 carburetor on it.
Yeah.
It starts right up at stone cold, 32 degrees. Pump it once, turn the key, it starts right up. Runs absolutely fantastic, but it doesn't matter whether it's warm, cold, or in between. When I turn a corner and I just lay off on the gas, I get that stumble hesitation, like it's starving for gas. What do you think's going on there?
It might have a power valve going out in that carburetor. It'll still start up when it's cold, if it is, but it will not give the added fuel it needs as you accelerate. If I remember right, you got to pull that one off, and it's underneath and not in the front like you get with the other ones, the other model carburetors. I think that's in the base of it underneath. But yeah, if it's not getting that right amount of fuel, if that diaphragm's torn in there, it's not gonna go. It'll kind of stumble.
So I'm really not too familiar with the carburetor. I've never rebuilt the carburetor or anything, but
you could probably rebuild that one yourself.
Simple, like a YouTube video.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the carburetor off and watch YouTube video on it, or even just pay attention to the instructions that come with the carburetor kits, they're not that hard. That one's a easier one of the carburetors to do. The other Ford carburetors are super, super easy, but that one's not too bad at all. The settings, you want to set the.
Besides that, it runs absolutely fantastic. That's the only thing. But,
yeah, then it's probably clean. It's probably clean. That valve's just probably bad. You can get when you buy the carburetor kit, it'll come with a needle and seat. You really probably won't even have to adjust the float level because it's probably pretty close unless you bend it when you take it apart, which probably won't happen if you're real careful with it. But, throw a new needle and seat in it, new power valve, stick it together, and if it's got a little dirt in it, you can spray it out with some carburetor cleaner in there. But yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to do. I think that's what's happening, is it's just starving a little bit for fuel as you accelerate.
And the power valve is basically like the plunger that decides and pushes the amount of fuel that's going to be metered through the system. And when that starts getting a leak in it, it just can't operate smooth at that point. Or else you could have a problem where a float level and it's not keeping the level of fuel in the bowl quite right for some reason, and then that would cause you the problem when you're turning the corner. But most likely, yes, that problem is in the carburetor, and the biggest problem for carburetor rebuilders, we've talked about it in another episode, is finding somebody that wants to do it if you're not going to try to do it yourself.
Right.
And then if it's really old and gunky, which yours doesn't sound like it is because it works good otherwise, there's not a lot of people that have the chemicals in their shop anymore to dip the carburetors and do all that stuff, because those chemicals are nasty. And there's very few people that have that stuff around. It used to be you walk into a shop and they had 5-gallon buckets of that stuff on storage.
Yeah, I've got rid of mine because it's just too dangerous for me to clean a carburetor. The time it takes to do it and get it going. If it's a small engine, I can buy a brand new one and avoid the hazard of it. And if it's a big one, I can buy a brand new one
and avoid the hazard of it
and just trade it in as a rebuild. They do that. It's just so much simpler and safer than to clean it. Let them clean it in an industrial setting where they have the machines and they're all sealed up and they're going through OSHA approved type stuff. Let them do it.
Would you if this weren't working as well outside of this problem, would you switch this one over, a 67 Mustang?
I'd switch it over to fuel injection
if
I'm going to drive it. But if I was going to fix the carburetor, I may just take it off and try to put a power valve in it, put it right back on without rebuilding it and without all that cleaning. Put some gloves on and just swap it.
That's kind of where I was going with it. I think that's something I would do because I don't want to fool with the way it runs right now. It runs fantastic. It starts right up. You say that about the carburetors. Up until about 10 years ago, there was a guy who had a carbureted shop right out of his house. He employed about 10 guys in there just doing carburetors. He eventually closed shop. So
cancer.
Yeah, you're pretty much on your own. Yeah, you're on your own now.
Well, this 67 Mustang definitely fits our criteria for a Berkeley One Classic. We saw some really nice Mustangs that people had restored to different levels out at the Barrett Jackson auction when we were just there, and plenty of Eleanor clones and different things that we saw. And so is this car a fastback or a notchback? What is it?
Oh no, it's just a regular old 289 with a vinyl top.
Don't tell us anymore. No, we got to guess the color.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that if this has got a vinyl top, the 76 Mustang 289, it's going to be a maroon or a burgundy, I think.
Okay, I'm gonna go with black. Even with the vinyl top, I'm going black.
It's green.
It's green. John, what color is the car?
It's green, but lime gold, they call it. But it's green.
Okay. All right.
Russ wins that one big time there.
It's not the color I was thinking. I was thinking the other green, like forest green. So we'll get you back on the line there with producer Doug Mashik, and he will get you a hoodie courtesy of our friends over at Berkeley One Classics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. We had a call recently about a Volvo.
Yes.
Where'd Volvo go?
They haven't gone anywhere. They're still selling cars. A lot of electrics.
I don't see them, though. I mean, what?
I see them all over the place.
Did we catch up with them? I mean, but there was a time when you would see them and it was rare, but you would see a lot of them. Now it doesn't seem like you see as many.
I see quite a few, but I see so many other cars
Sure.
too. There's lots of cars out there.
That's an enigma a little bit because
do you kind of agree with what I'm saying?
They've had runs of popularity, it seems like, and I have to be careful not to be too jaded on this because my sister drove Volvo cross-country wagons for 15 years, 20 different. She had 3 or 4 of them, and so because of that, I paid more attention to Volvos.
Sure. So now you really see fewer because you used to see them all the time.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm just trying to figure that out in my mind, but. We have a Volvo dealer here in town. You see the cars around. They definitely jumped out and took the lead on we're rushing to EV, but they so they've just recently announced and said, "Hey, pump the brakes. We're gonna wait a little longer. We're not doing the mandate." But no, Volvo has been one of those companies that really along with Saab and some others, Subaru now in the recent years, they've really touted their safety program for their vehicles and the strength of their vehicles.
That was the thing when I was a kid, was if that was what you got if you could afford it, because it was the safest. And now everything's kind of caught up with them.
Yeah, you look at a big Volvo sedan back in the day, and they just looked like you couldn't squish it.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Don't forget, you can watch the show on our YouTube channel, and if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and join the Hoodie Fan Club at UnderTheHoodShow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Kim Carruthers, congratulations from all of us here at Under the Hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu, and Berkeley One Classic, celebrating 50 years of collector car coverage.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Carl. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Carl, what can we do for you?
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I've got a 2014 Buick Regal, and the other day it did something a little weird. It was parked in the garage. The key was in the ignition, but in the off position, and it was starting itself up. It would run for a few seconds, turn off, and then a few seconds, like it in a loop, it would just start itself up, run for a couple seconds, turn off, and then a little bit later it just start itself back up, run for a few seconds, and turn off. I'm just kind of wondering what would cause that.
Ghosts?
Yeah,
Could. I'm not saying I'm not
this time of year.
Yeah, you have the ghost codes checked.
You
have them checked and see if there's anything in there.
I didn't see any.
Have you had it since it was new?
You can't see a ghost.
You can't see a ghost. They're spooky. You haven't. Okay. If you the factory remote start, I'm sure it does have one, but the factory remote start will only allow it to start twice, and then you've got to start the car and shut it off with the button. But an aftermarket remote start, we have found more people that have an aftermarket remote start they didn't even know the car had. They bought it with one. They didn't have a remote, nothing. And they've had weird things. They're more prone to, and they're super, super rare. Like maybe 1 out of 10,000 probably would have an issue like this. It just doesn't happen. But if it did, it could start the car and then it would shut off. And then it could start the car and shut off. I've seen them do really weird stuff.
Do you have an aftermarket remote start in it?
It does have remote start, but I think it was the built-in one. I have had the car. It's got 80,000 miles on it now. I've had it since 40,000 miles, and it's been a few years, and it's never done it before.
See, people don't like the short range, that extremely short range of the factory remote start. So if they get a car, it's more likely that if somebody buys one with the remote start, that they'll go buy the aftermarket because they're like, oh, it doesn't go very far.
But they like it enough that they think
they call like our guys at Audio Playground. Hey, can I get this to go farther? Sure, we can put in a real remote start instead of that cheap factory one that doesn't go very far. Oh, let's do that. But then they sell the car and they keep the remote. Maybe they're mad because they couldn't get it taken out, so they just take the remote and say, well, I'm just going to keep it. They can't have any remote start. No soup for you. And they'll keep it, and then they don't know. So you'll want to have somebody look under the dash. They'll be able to tell you real quick, looking under the panel, if it's got an aftermarket remote start. If it does, they'll want to remove that, and then you could put a different one in if you want.
Is there any indication for him just to look at and see, like the key fob, is it the original
look
Buick
under
key fob?
Yeah, you'd look under the dash and see if somebody's put a switch, any switch anywhere hidden under the dash. If it's under there, that means there's a valet mode for a remote start, and it's under there somewhere. Okay. Could have been an alarm, remote start / together.
That is the most likely scenario of how this could happen.
I have not seen
if this car was a factory car, 2014 Regal, I don't quite know how it would happen unless there was
They're protected from that.
Yeah, even if the starter relay was...
It wouldn't start, though. It would just grind.
Try to start.
Yeah, it would crank. I've seen cars crank when they have a switch problem, but these things are lots of redundancies to prevent this from ever happening. If GM or any of the manufacturers had a car that just started while it was in your garage by itself, it would have a lot of liability in there, and that would be a recall waiting to happen. safety recall.
Have you been next to it and witnessed it happen? I mean, or have you come out and found it running? How do you know?
I only saw it do it once. It was a couple days ago, and it was like I woke up at 6:30 in the morning, and I looked outside in the garage, and I saw like lights flashing in the garage. And so I went out. I thought just like the lights had turned themselves on, and I got to the garage, and it was doing this. I don't know how long it had been doing that. My wife thought she'd seen lights, like earlier in the night. So I almost think it was doing it for at least several hours.
Did you
all night?
Did you turn it off yourself to get it to shut off?
I pulled the key, like it turned itself off as I went in and just pulled the key out of the ignition because it was in, but in the off position. And I just, and then it stopped doing it.
To shut off a factory remote start, you need to have your foot on the brake and turn the key on and turn it off. To shut off all aftermarket remote starts, you just step on the brake. So if it does this again, just open the door and step on the brake. If you do that and it shuts off, it's definitely got an aftermarket remote start in it.
Okay.
Because if it's a factory one, you've got to step on the brake, turn the key on, and back off, and then it'll shut the car off. You can't just shut those. I've tried that many times. I was like, can I just step on the brake? No, you got to on and off.
Is it doing it at the same time every day?
I only caught it doing it once, and it didn't do it this morning. It wasn't doing it, but I had taken the key out of the ignition. It was like it was laying in the car yet, but yeah, it hasn't done it again since. But it's only been a day.
Well, very dangerous situation if it's starting up in your garage.
Park it outside.
Yeah, you got some carbon monoxide challenges. If that car ran for too long in your garage, that could be a big issue. So you don't want to.
Yeah, luckily I've got a detached garage. So.
Okay. All right. So only the mice are scared. Yeah. So that's but that's something to not ignore for sure. Maybe are you a hunter?
No.
Oh, I say put a game camera on it.
Oh, there you go.
Just a thought.
There's lots now.
Yeah, you can buy a lot of cameras you can set up, but just to see and monitor something that would sense motion, so you don't have to sit there.
Yeah.
You can get a Ring stick-up cam. They're like $99 on Amazon, and if you get one of those, that stick-up is just a name. They'll set on a table.
That's not going to help.
It does. It'll tell you when it starts.
Oh, that's true.
Because
you
hook that to your Ring app in your phone, because I got a bunch of these cameras around at the shop and home and stuff. But if the car starts, when the lights come on, it's going to give it a false, hey, somebody's there when they're not there. And you could look at the timeline and see, that thing started 14 times last night.
Park it. Do you have a Ring camera? Park it where the Ring camera can see it.
Yeah, right in front of it.
So what does Carl do now? What's next?
He was telling us.
Oh.
I do have a security camera. I just need to tell it to look like through the window of the garage. I think I might be able to pick it up. So that's a good idea. I'll try that.
Yeah, or park the car right in front of it for a night and see what it does. Just one night if it's going to be nice
the
out.
Steps.
Yeah, pull it on the front porch.
I don't know. What I would do, first of all, is I would 100% verify that it does or doesn't have a remote start in it. Mm-hmm. And if you find that the car, if 100% verified, does not have an aftermarket remote start in it,
call a priest, get an exorcism.
Yeah, because then we're getting into some things that
are
until
October's over.
Pretty unusual. I mean, like highly unusual.
Yeah, it's got right. It's got to be the.
We want to know how you find out.
Please call us back when you find out
on the 31st if you can.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
866-594-4150. That's the phone number to reach us here at the End of the Hood Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. What else has caught your guys' attention?
I just had something catch my attention recently here. There is a first for every recall.
Okay.
For me, this is a first.
Okay.
There is a recall that was just issued on very small sample size hydrogen vehicle.
Oh, okay.
The Hyundai Nexo.
Okay.
And they say that there's 1,600 of you between U.S. and Canada that need to pay attention because there is a pressure regulator that can break and cause it to expel hydrogen,
That seems bad.
I don't think that's good. That could lead to a fire. And so they are concerned, and they're telling you to park it outside, and you can still drive it, but you need to make plans to get that fixed. And I'm going to guess that's not one of them things that they're going to say, come on down, we got parts on stock.
We got tons of pressure release valves.
I was kind of shocked about something. I asked the question during the break. Guys, if we had an electric car right now, we'd know exactly where to go to at least get it charged. And then there's probably more if we looked them up where to go. If you got a hydrogen car, we just looked at each other and went, I have no idea where I'd even go. I just looked up.
I have an answer to that.
There are 41 hydrogen fueling stations within 30 miles of here. 41. They're all over town. All those dots are hydrogen refueling stations.
What is that? Huh? Is that
You pull up and refuel, and some of them are at gas stations where they have a thing in the parking lot, like to fill with propane.
I'm Russ. I see the green dots.
It's natural gas is one, and hydrogen is the other. I
believe
and both
what
is
you're
both.
reading, but I want to go see that there is a place there that I'm going to drive and look.
I want to see what they look like.
Is it not behind a closed gate? Is this not a medical facility? Is this what is this place that I can pull up and fuel my hydrogen vehicle? Because I'm guessing it's got a different kind of coupler.
Yeah, these are the United States ones.
That covers a lot.
Yeah, so they must be out there. That
says it's for fuel.
Some of them are hydrogen only. Some of them are propane only, and I know where those are.
Propanes are
I've seen this
all over.
And then the green dot was both. That does both hydrogen and propane.
Guess what? All three of us are going to be doing this week.
Is that for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
To refuel a car. It's alternative fueling stations is what it says.
I just read an article about how there was someone who bought, one of the magazines had a story of a guy in California who bought the hydrogen cell, and he was mad because California was not keeping up what they said they would on the...
California, I think, came out and said that they're, whatever area, they're taking down the infrastructure.
But they didn't have very many in all of California. He said it was by far the number one state for ownership of this car because of those, and it was like 51 or 54.
Were they going to take it down or just stop building it out? I can't remember.
I don't remember, but they weren't working either.
They waved the white flag on the,
and it was kind of like electric chargers where you'd get there and it didn't work, or you'd get there and they took it out 8 months ago and it never got updated on the website.
Since we brought that up, on our recent journey, Under the Hood Show on the road, Russ masterfully, with our help a little bit, prepared and managed to get us completely functional for our entire show, everything that we do, for the most part, other than call screener screen, to sit down in the middle of an auditorium at Westworld in Scottsdale, Arizona, a joint car arena and multi-purpose arena that it does a lot of equestrian things. We were in the Equidome, and we were able to run the show from there. That in itself was impressive. Did I say that right?
It just
hit you?
Just hit me.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. You're usually the one who catches the smallest details.
And that stage we were on was over the horse gate.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
There's a hole in the ground.
Because Michelle pointed out where they hadn't cleaned out all the horse manure.
The ramp went down where we were sitting.
Yeah. Okay. That was amazingly impressive. The other thing that happened on this trip was that our rental car situation didn't go as planned.
Oh, your car's ready. Just go get the keys. It wasn't ready.
And so Russ he was planning on, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Russ. He was planning on renting an electric car. He was planning on renting a Tesla. Were you going to get a Model 3? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yep. That was the plan.
And I knew where the chargers would be for that. I was good to go.
Yeah. So the Model 3 did not happen. Or if it would have happened, he would have waited a long time, and we kind of had
hour.
We had a time crunch, so we were getting nervous. My van wasn't ready. I ended up test driving a Grand Wagoneer that I've never drove before. Pretty nice vehicle.
Yep.
I was impressed. Does well on the freeway. We went ahead and did all that, but Russ got to drive, and we had Under the Hood Show tested before a Mach 1. Electric Mach E. Thank you. I was still thinking of the yellow Mach 1 that sold way too cheap at Bear Jackson. Yes. But Mach E electric for his rental. So Russ, tell us about your Mach E rental or your Mach E experience for 3 days in Scottsdale.
Driving the car was no problem. It was way faster than most cars on the road around it of that class. The range wasn't horrible. It got us where we were going. I mean, it would have gone probably 300 miles on the charge.
With spirited driving, it dropped a lot faster.
Not bad, though. It still was, even after that second day of driving Days of Thunder back, it was still at 50%. But here's the problem. You got to charge it. If you're at your house, I could see how an owner of an electric car would be fine. They go to work, they come home, they charge it. Doesn't take much charging.
Plug it in, just like your cell phone.
Yep, because the first day we drove it, we didn't go very far, and it had like 82% charge. I charged it for 2 hours. It was full. Good to go. Second day, there was no spot available to charge it. Because...
at least conveniently not available.
Right. Our hotel had three chargers there. That car, they told me, was going to have a Tesla supercharger adapter in it so I could use a Tesla plug. Well, it did not. And when I called them, they said, well, don't worry, not our problem. I'm like, yeah, of course it's not your problem. They're like, we'll make sure that gets replaced when it comes back. So it was gone. Somebody had borrowed that or left it on a connector somewhere, I would imagine. So there's no way to charge it. There were 2 other Teslas that were there every day, and they were plugged in to the other 2 cords constantly, even though
were they the same cars? I guess I didn't pay.
They were both 2 white Teslas,
and
they were plugged in. They both said full on their charger, and I never saw them move. So I'm assuming they just left them there the whole time, occupying the spaces.
Just using the premium parking spot.
And when I went in, so the third day, which was the last day, I said, I got to get this charged or they're going to bill me if you return it empty.
Which was the part that I did not ever think of.
Yep. So
in renting an electric car.
So I was like, I just want to charge it. There was a girl sitting there in a Kia, eating her lunch with her feet up, plugged in kind of sideways across 2 spaces. And I said, I've got a feeling that's not right. I don't think she's staying in the hotel. And I asked the person at the front desk, I said, hey, there's a person out there in a Kia kind of sitting out there charging. Oh, yeah, she's probably eating her lunch, right? Like, yeah. I said, is she staying here? Well, no. I said, well, can you tell her to move? And he says, well, no. He says, we're listed on the public list of charging spots, so there's really nothing we can do about it. I said, well, so she's stealing your electricity and you're not going to do anything about it? He goes, well, yeah, that stuff happens all the time. I said, well, I'm staying here and I'm paying and I want to charge my car. I have to charge. Well, she'll move eventually. She works over there at McDonald's and she'll just leave it there until she's off later. So sure enough, we left. And when we came back like late at night, that spot was open. I was like, yes. So I charged it. It was fine. But
if not, that would have been a problem in the morning to try to figure out how to get that car charged.
New to experience. I just would have had to pay it. But something new to experience when you're thinking about an electric car, because the driving of the car is not the problem. The range of the car was not the problem. The charging of it was the problem. And in fact, that first night when I charged it for 2 hours and it said fully charged, I was thinking, should I move it? Should I not? I'm like, yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah, we were.
I had this devil thing going on. Like,
I was saying leave it.
And
Chris
before
was saying,
I said anything, Chris says, you better move that car because you're going to be that guy. And I said, I know. So I moved the car. The second I moved it, there was a guy sitting across
as
waiting.
You were going to get in it. Guy goes, are you moving?
Yeah, he was waiting to see if I was going to move at some point so he could pull in. I was like, go ahead.
It's literally like trying like a table at a bar where it's a self-seating and there's none available and you want to get a seat to get a food. And
are you guys leaving?
Are you guys leaving? Is this mine? Can I get there?
No,
can I hang out behind you?
We're
until
done,
you're ready?
but we're just going to sit forever. Yeah, so I can see how that goes. Put a whole new perspective, but it was very ironic that Ford Motor Company sent me. The guy called producer Doug, and then he called me and said, we want you to do an interview about range anxiety and try to get you to convince people that it's not a thing. And so I sent him an email at Chris's prodding. I said, yeah, it is a thing. What do you want to do about it? And he's like,
I have a new take on electric cars from the weekend too.
Yes.
And it's your story. So when we were getting there and talking about electric cars, your wife and I were talking, and Tammy said, I just don't think I could drive one because of range anxiety. I know it wouldn't be a problem. I know I could drive around. I know I could charge it at home and I could drive to town to Sioux Falls. I could drive 30 miles. I know that I could do it, but it makes me, I think that anxious. I wouldn't be able to, it makes me anxious just thinking about it. And Russ was part of some of that conversation. It was like, well, they'll go 300 miles an hour, 200 miles. There's no problem. And then when we got in the car, you're like right here, it says what did it say when we got at 280 or something?
Yeah.
And it was like, it's probably a little less than that, but this will be no problem. But when we got to the hotel when the spots were full, you got angsty right away.
Yeah.
Then he got it
120 miles
charged.
left.
Then we went to the thing. He came back and he had used 20% of the power. And he was like, I have to get this charger. I'm going to have to pay the fee. And I was like, well, we got 3 more days. If you don't charge it today, you'll be fine tomorrow. But that never, when we got to the hotel, you never were fine with whatever the situation was unless it was open. You got your range anxiety as soon as you were in it. You didn't have it at all when we were getting it.
No.
But as soon as you had to drive it and find that
it's
spot.
like a cell phone when you go, I only got 20% left. And it's like, yeah, but that'll
you're
go
not
for
using it.
a couple hours.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Yeah.
But some people are like, I got to charge it.
And that's what you were in the car.
Because
it just brought it to you.
Yeah, there was no place to charge that thing.
And for myself, with the Jeep that we had, it was like, all right, we'll
not
stop
a
by the
Jeep.
gas station. Or it's not.
There
not
were
a Jeep
Chargers.
anymore.
It's a Grand Wagoneer.
Yeah, no longer a
I
Jeep.
can't say Jeep. I'm sorry, Stellantis.
It said there was a charger 1.2 miles away from where we're at, a public charger. Said there were 16 of them. And I thought, I could go over there, right? But in that neighborhood, did I want to walk 1.2 miles? I don't think so.
I would have given you a ride.
But still, leave the car.
I know, it's just
over at the.
But for myself on my Grand Wagoneer, not a Jeep, it was a quick splash and go at the fuel station and back to the rental car agency.
Yeah, we won't be doing that anymore unless somebody gives us a Ferrari.
But that was, but I mean, I really was enjoying just seeing that in action. And you hit it right on the head because you jump in and drive it. Hey, we got the electric. Oh, now I got to figure this out every day.
Yeah.
It was
great car.
You know that the air worked and that the ride. The biggest drawback about that whole car is the ride. If somebody rides in the back seat, the front's not real smooth, but riding in the back seat was horrible. Girls riding back there were just like, man, Doug's like, she's still saying how rough. I mean, it was with the battery and everything. It was like, bam, they were getting jarred. I could see them back there.
I didn't hear about that.
Do me a favor. Take your headphones off for a second. The rough ride wasn't because of the suspension. It was because of the accelerator and the brake. It was very rough.
Was he running it like a slot car?
He was running it like a slot car, and then when he'd hit the brakes, he'd go, I have to remember that these brakes are touchy.
Oh my gosh. So this lady, we were parking. We're parking. I'm pulling up, and this lady, she was like the no soup lady. She would put her
was working
hand
the gate.
Up, stop. And I'm like, I'm just going to go by her. And I went to pull by her. She jumps out in front of me. And the car says, warning, pedestrian collision. And it locked up the brakes. And everybody went flying. And my wife's going like,
and
you're driving.
The thing is, she never even got in front, but she was right at the front. And
right
she was
in the
hitting there.
Periphery.
And it stopped. Yeah, it was.
Boom.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Until next time, you can find us at underthehoodshow.com. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants. All right, welcome to the after show. I don't have much to, we covered a lot of stuff there.
A lot after.
Yeah.
Not during.
Yeah, we're good. We got a lot.
You folks that are out there on YouTube, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
So we can help you tune up.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate that. Tell your friends. We made a lot of new friends out as we went west and picked up some new subscribers and some new fans. And please tell your friends. I had a group up here from the First Christian Reformed Church last night, some fifth grade cadets, and we brought them around to show them Nordstrom's, and it was a quick tour, but I showed them the radio studio, and they didn't care to see a radio studio, but boy, they were excited to see a podcast and YouTube studio.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it was a YouTube studio, and they were big-eyed. They were telling me about their little podcast studios they want to build.
Right on.
I saw it firsthand how, oh my gosh, I said the word YouTube and they lit up like flashlights.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's like the difference between, if you had said, hey, here's our hi-fi player, or here's our gramophone. We have gramophones, but we also have this CD player. That's what it would have been like for us. We got in 1987. If they'd have said we have these CD players too, we'd have been like, "Oh man, really?" That's it's
Or should we go try this one? See if I get it right. I've been playing my Atari 2600 all day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got a Sega. Oh my.
ColecoVision.
Is that the next step?
I think Sega's a little bit further, but
Yeah, I mean, but whatever it might be. When those first graphics-based games came out compared to the dot matrix games. Oh.
Carl from
Pong.
Wichita, welcome to the show. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And I do want to one more thing on the because I did notice that on the driving, when Russ was driving,
Hang on, HOV lane.
yeah, and I noticed, and this is
And
100.
if somebody cuts you off, the emergency braking works also.
the thing that I noticed was if I was sitting in the front or the back, but if I was paying attention and I could see that Russ was going to pass someone,
he could tell.
Well, I mean, whatever, you know what I
Feel.
mean? Or you're getting on the interstate, okay? I'm watching us get on the interstate. You'd hit the gas or the accelerator, sorry, and it did not feel at all weird. It felt like the car was super torquey. I mean, it jumps when you hit it. And if I was looking, I didn't notice it. But if I wasn't paying attention, even those smallest inputs to go forward fast were very jarring. So that is part of it too. When I was aware of the moves, when I could see the move you were about to make, it wasn't bad at all. Same with the stopping.
The auto brakes were different in this one because they were turned off and they were different than the one we test drove.
Yeah,
this was
sure.
a lot newer year, but when I would stop, even with it in whisper mode and the auto braking off, if you came to a stop and you were really light, it would still had regenerative braking on. I suppose for economy, they wanted to get that range up. And I was like, come on, when you quit grabbing, we turned off the auto hold, the auto brakes, and it still did it. But crazy was when we were going down the road, Chris is like, oh, here comes a Waymo. It's coming down, one of those driverless cars. It's coming down the on-ramp, and it's just trucking. Those cars they don't waste any time. They accelerate fast. They stop fast. They're just in and out. But this thing's trucking on down, and we're like, Chris is like, get up alongside of it. Check this out. There's nobody driving. And we're getting him because we didn't see anybody in the back. We get up next to, we look over, and there's this dude just down the road, just jamming along. We're like, there's a driver. That's boring. But they are so weird. Oh. I'm standing in the parking lot in the morning, 4:30 a.m., getting ready to go do our live show.
To go plug in his thing because
that
he
morning
unplugged it at 10 p.m. So he thought if he got out again.
No, that was when I was trying to charge it. So I'm out there, and it was Friday morning because I was loading up the gear to have us all ready so we could leave the hotel to head over to Westboro.
Once again, nice job on that.
Thanks.
Perfect.
So I have
good
the
as in
trunk.
here.
I have the trunk open, and I pick up my big case, and it's like 100 pounds, and slide it in there, and then I put my backpack on, and
That's like 100 pounds.
yeah, and as I'm putting it on, you got to jump up right to put the backpack on the other shoulder, and I got the roof open, so I bang my head on it. I'm like, what the hell? Great. Could this day get any weirder? And I hear the sprinklers come on. Over in the thing, I'm like, oh, look, sprinklers. Oh, I'm driving an electric car. And then I hear beep, beep, and this Waymo came around the corner, which is just 2 cars down for me, so it just snuck up on me, honks at me, and goes around me and doesn't miss a beat, doesn't slow down, nothing, just beep, beep, and does a hard swerve left and goes around me, and I'm going, what the? It's like I was in a scene from Back to the Future. I was looking for the robot walking the dog or something, like one of those Disney invisible dog things on the leash. I was like, what the? It was so just surreal thinking, okay, here we are in the future. And then forgot about the homeless people. There were a few homeless people sleeping in the bushes out there too. So no matter how technologically advanced we get, you've still got, can't they fix that and help people? I'm like, just like, wow, we got driverless cars, but we still have people that can't, they have no place to sleep at night. So
I thought the robots were going to do the work. so we wouldn't have to work. I didn't think
At
the
some
robots
point,
would
that's
take
what
the
they're-
jobs and it would be a bad thing.
That's what they're claiming. They'll work so we'll be in the floaty chairs
When
and
I
get
was
fat
10,
like Wally.
When I was 10, if you told me that a robot was going to take my job or an AI was going to replace me on the radio, I'd go, sweet. And I just don't have to work, right? I mean,
If
but
that
no, that's not how it works.
Tesla bot was at the Tesla booth
yes.
at Barrett Jackson, if that thing would have woke up and stuck its hand out and said, "Hello, Chris, how are you?" I think we all would have probably crapped ourselves right there, because when you see one on TV, it's one thing, but when you're standing eye to eye with this thing, looking at it, and it had its outer shell.
I was not ever around you when you saw. What was your impression of that?
It had its outer covering off, so
Yeah.
you could see all the mechanicals. But looking at that thing face to face, it really was a little eerie. But then I reached out and grabbed its hand, and I went, "Boy, this thing feels cheap." It was plastic.
Yeah, it totally did.
Plastic and like soft pads on it, like a dog's pads, and I was like, and it was floppy. Like I was like, "Is this the real model, or is it one of those things where it moves like an RC car, but the second you
Right.
power it up, it's like," I'm like, "Ooh." But it was just a little unnerving at first look, and they're getting ready to. They've got the Model 3, which is going to be the final physical version of this thing, and he's saying he's going to dump these things on the market like mad next year, and we'll see what it does. But the prices are coming down.
Elon did his big introduction of the robo-taxi and the
Yes.
and the didn't some robots come on
The
stage
Gen
with
3
him?
robots, yeah, and
Came on stage with
they're
him?
fully AI powered now. The new Gen 3,
Oh,
so
good.
you can
Sounds
talk
like
to them.
nothing could go wrong.
What could go
Right.
wrong?
You'll talk to them, they'll talk to you. They're able to answer a question within 1 second. So whatever question you pose to it, it'll come back. I just watched a demo on YouTube of the interaction.
Better than a
and I thought,
presidential interview.
yeah, it very much so. And I watched it and I thought, this is crazy. But he says we're going to be able to make the robot for about 10 grand, sell it for 20 grand. And 20 sounds reasonable, because even around here, we have a heck of a time getting like students to come mow grass, pull weeds, because it's an ongoing battle around here. If we could pay 20 grand for a Tesla robot and it had a 3 to 5 year lifespan,
Let's not put too much faith in that pricing.
if that was the
Yeah.
price, it would be much more affordable. And they don't talk back. They don't take breaks. They just go from sun up to sundown without
Except
any
when they're trying to
supervision.
find a charger.
Yeah. They charge at night. They walk into your charger you already have, so nobody will be in it,
They
hopefully.
walk into your bedroom looking for a charger. What are you doing?
Hey,
And you wake up in the morning with that thing staring down at you. You'd be like,
that would
"Whoa!"
you're not where you're supposed to be. Go.
Sorry, sir.
I saw the creator of was it the producer or the creator of iRobot is already making claims that Elon has got too many similarities and to the vehicles in iRobot.
Well, a
and,
robot's a robot.
and so he's making claims. Do you see that?
yeah. You mean the movie you made based on the book that described the thing that you
Yeah,
made?
pretty
Yeah.
baseless claim, right?
It's robot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how
Well,
I pictured him too.
You see, Shelby had a lawsuit they won it was about a year ago. They won it with the Eleanor thing because the people who wrote the Gone in 60 Seconds said, "Oh no, that's a character. You can't call a car an Eleanor because you're copyright infringement." And they actually confiscated some vehicles when they were advertising was that to sell it, and then Shelby got involved, and there was like no. So they were able to do that. So still, I don't know. It was awful risky.
And that Cobra that went for 30 grand, that Resto Mod or the Tribute, that one that we were parked,
Yeah.
that was fun. Russ, the thing he leaves out when he talks about reaching out and grabbing the robot is it was behind rope. We weren't
It was
supposed to
fine.
touch it.
Yeah, don't touch this.
Russ was very cavalier with
But
his
you saw
touching.
you saw the people
Yeah.
manning the booth, right?
Yeah,
and like, they're it's fine.
He was
I don't think they're going to say
doing all
much.
sorts of things that made me nervous.
I've been around 3 of them robots on display, but I've never reached out and grabbed one. I wish I would have now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my wife did. That's the first thing she did. It's like when we went to the Titanic display. It says "Do not touch." It's like I want to touch the Titanic. No, I'm never going to get to again. So she's like walking across the rope, and oh look, and the people are like, "I'm sorry, miss, you're not supposed to do that." Okay.
One point we walked
I was
past.
like, I want to touch it.
We walked past the Cobra and he goes, this looks really good. I wonder, is it fiberglass? And he knocks on it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no,
Oh,
it's original.
an
I did that once to something.
This
You're
is-
just like, quit touching that.
This was an original AC Cobra, not the big fendered one,
Yeah.
just the original 289, and it was they look cheap when they're not fendered, and I
Yeah,
was like,
it looked
toom, toom, and it was like toom, toom, toom. We're like, no, this is a metal. This is the original.
And that
Chris
one was actually for sale.
Chris is looking up prices, and he's looking at the Pantera, and I'm like, oh, these things are cheap.
Yeah.
You can get them a dime a dozen. And I have not seen a price on one of those in the last 40 years. Not since they were, you could buy a basket case for $3,500 in the 80s. And we looked it up, and we're like, oh, look, a basket case now on Facebook Marketplace is like $35,000. It's like, oh, okay, makes sense. He's like, yeah, this one's going for 1.2, and the other one was like
1.2 million, and he's going.
Well, so I walk up and I reach under it. He's like,
you touch it, you buy it.
Chris is like, well, where's the engine of this thing? And I just reach down and I hit the button and I pull the hatch open, and he's like, oh, there it is. I'm like, he's like, what is that? And I'm like, that's just a Ford 351.
That's in that Pantera.
Yeah, it's like, that's just a 351 Cleveland. And I said, and watch this. And I close the trunk, and of course, pushing it down, it's like, like there's no support, and that's factory. And it goes, boom, and it sounded like a gutted out door on an
closing the hood on a medium duty flip forward trunk.
It was
front end hood.
I said, Chris, it's cheap. It's just supposed to. It's like a supercar that was never really a supercar,
Right.
But people thought it was because it looked kind of cool. But it's really cheap. Really
I
cheap.
said, why is there so much space under there?
Kind of like
He
the band.
So the heat has a place to go right into your
and
face.
no air conditioning. It just
Yeah.
comes right up your back, and
Yeah.
you got sweat running down your back when you're trying to drive it, and the steering isn't very good, and they're loud. And
That one was 100,000.
what's that?
The price on that one was 102.
I thought you said it was 1.2.
No, that was on the Cobra you were pounding on.
Oh,
The Cobra was the one.
oh, so the Pantera was only $100,000.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
100,000.
that's reasonable. I thought you were saying that was up.
Your whole warranty, your whole
But then
system is.
then right next to it, we're looking at that Jimmy that was there, and I said, "What's so special about this going for over $100,000?" It was way over $100,000. wasn't it?
140, yeah. Like they had some cars for sale there. That was kind of
Yeah, so you could just buy them, like buy it now, or
Yep.
like eBay.
I was off this. I didn't go there until later. I saw that. You guys had told me about it.
Big bucks. But yeah, just knock on them if you ever wonder. But then again, if it's a quality car, the knocking is fine.
That's true.
Followed up by the Tesla robot polishing the car behind you.
All right, we ready?
I'm done.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Click like. If you're logged in, please, every time you look at one of our videos, click like. I get the whole thing.
yeah.
You click like, and then it says, do you want to create a account or
No,
I
yeah.
get that. I'm not asking you to do that. I mean, that would be great.
There's a lot of people that are logged.
yeah.
They're logged in all the time.
Yeah. So if you're logged in, hit click like anytime. You don't have and subscribe's cool too, and commenting and all that.
Signs of life.
More
Right.
videos coming. Just warning you. We're gonna start now that I got what I need and
Mm-hmm.
area and this and that. I'm gonna start throwing more stuff up. You wondered what we're doing on the show. What is this alternator test you're talking about? What is this starter test? What is this? Why do AFM lifters fail? All these different things. You're like, what is that? You can, if you don't want to watch them, don't watch them. But a lot of people are really wanting to find that stuff.
Sure.
So I'm gonna start posting it.
There you go. Thanks, everybody.